You can wear the proper clothing for the weather, okay? But that clothing may not be fit for the task at hand, which in this case it certainly wasn't. Same thing is true with Scripture. If we don't have the proper Scripture, we cannot apply what we need to our lives as believers. I grew up in a town in Manitowoc County. It was a sprawling metropolitan area called Grimm's. I don't even know if it's still on the map. But it was so large they divided it into North and South Grimm's. But years ago in the early 1900s, it was a sprawling community. They had railroad come through, they had cattle auctions. There was a dance hall on the north side of Grimm's, another dance hall on the south side of Grimm's. We had a one-room schoolhouse, which I attended for a few years. And in the middle of the schoolroom was a stove. Around that stove is where the teacher held classes. It was grades 1 to 6. She handled all of them. I don't think there were more than 25 or 30 kids in that school. We had to go out to get the water. They had a pump outside. We'd bring water in off the pump, and when the pump quit, at that point we went to a neighbor, I believe it was Shan's, and we got water from them for the school. So, needless to say, things were a little backwards at that time. They even had lime kilns in the big city of Grimm's. So it was a thriving community. We got mail twice a day. Anybody remember that? The trains came through, they would drop the mail off, and it would be delivered twice a day. One of my grandfathers at that time lived about maybe 7 miles away from Grimm's. He was a farmer, and he could tell by the train whistle in the morning whether it was going to rain or not. When the train comes through twice a day, you probably get a pretty good bearing on that. My other grandfather had a repair shop, a gas station, and a small farm. And he also worked construction, and my mother worked for the post office. When he passed away, we bought that home, a small farm. My dad worked construction. One Saturday, it was very rainy. We had between 10 and 12 milking cows, and we milked by hand back then. My job was to get the cows to the barn. This particular Saturday, it was pouring, raining cats and dogs. So my dad went down to the barn to open the doors for the cows to get in, and I was going to go out and get the cows, and my mother, bless her heart, stopped me. She was going to help me. She broke out a yellow-colored raincoat, which I had never seen before. It was an adult's raincoat, which came down to my ankles. I was 12 years old at the time. It had a snap-on hood. Okay, Mike is nodding. Did she get it from you? I'll have to change my story here. Anyway, she was going to help me, so she dressed me up in this, what I'll call a Halloween costume, okay? I stepped out to get the cows. They were on the southeast corner of the house under a huge elm tree, Chinese elm tree. And they were hiding there trying to get out of the rain. I don't think I got 3 steps into the field. And those cows took one look at me, and they headed for the barn. And I don't mean walking. They ran, all right? I never saw animals run that fast in my life. To this day, I do not believe that cows are colorblind. They saw me in this yellow raincoat, my head covered. The only thing I was missing was the sickle. I looked like the Grim Reaper. And I think that's who they thought I was. So by the time I got to the barn, my father was none too happy with his son. And he said, "Why were you chasing the cows?" I said, "Dad, I didn't chase the cows." I said, "They just took off." He says, "I don't believe that." He says, "Cows don't run like that unless they're chased." Well, there was no changing the story to my dad. He knew what he saw. And what I would like to have said was, Dad, you know that woman that you married? She gave me this outfit. And that we learned from Adam and Eve, right? Spread the blame. So the moral to that story is simply this. You can wear the proper clothing for the weather, okay? But that clothing may not be fit for the task at hand, which in this case it certainly wasn't. Same thing is true with Scripture. If we don't have the proper Scripture, we cannot apply what we need to our lives as believers.